Now I've got Keith Batcheller on the Art Dealer Diaries here. Keith, it's been what? I saw you about in November when you came out to the Mountain Oyster Club, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's been what, 7 months, I guess,
Yeah, it's
something
been
like
a
that.
while. Yeah. And it sounds like you've been very busy since that time frame.
Yeah, I've had a little bit of travel and several shows.
So as
And
a fine artist, we'll get back to your backstory surely, but as a fine artist versus you were a significant player in the illustration world, you find that you have to do a lot more travel now, just because you have to sell your own work. You don't, not going through somebody that's helping with the illustration part.
that's very true. Especially the last 10 years that I was an illustrator, I did most of my work digitally. And so I just uploaded it to the client. I didn't have to leave my studio.
Right.
Yeah. And now with original paintings, you got to ship them or you got to take them to the shows. Yeah. So a lot more legwork there.
But you went ahead and said, I'm going to stop doing illustration, even though you were super successful. I assume you said that, or maybe you are still doing some illustration. Are you still doing illustration?
Well, I I had a very successful career as an illustrator for a little over 30 years. And when things started getting more spotty in the illustration market in about 2007, 2008, I decided now was the time to make the switch. I've always wanted to do uh, gallery painting and painted oils and all that sort of thing. So I decided to make the jump. But occasionally I was getting illustration work. Actually, right now, the city of San Dimas, where I live, they're putting up a Gold Line extension on the train, and they put up this huge bridge, and they want four murals for the bridge. Each one's going to be 15 feet tall by 10 feet wide, and they commissioned me to do all four of them. So that's going to be sort of an illustration type thing. I'm going to do the history of the city. So I have one panel on the Native American people that lived here, and then the early town, and then it was a big citrus industry that was here. So I'm going to feature that in one panel. And then the last panel will be how the town looks today.
And do they contact you, or do you have to compete to get that?
Well, they asked me to enter my idea for the show and what I would charge. And I had to do some comp ideas, what I wanted to do, and they selected me from that.
How do you figure out how to charge on something like that? I mean, that's 4 panels and they're huge, right? How big are they?
Yeah, they're 15 feet tall.
Yeah.
I'm doing them all digitally, by the way, on a Cintiq tablet. I have the skill to do that because when I was an illustrator.
So do you do it on the tablet? You make them, and then how do you transfer that to a painting?
Originally, they thought I was going to get up on a scaffold and paint these things on there, and at my age, I'm not going to do that. So I got a company that they'll print the artwork that I do on tiles, and they put a glass coating on the tiles, so they say they'll last for over 100 years.
Oh wow!
That way. So and then so that's the way to do it.
Yeah, that's way, way, way more time conservative to do it that way because 15.
And I can,
amazing.
Yeah, and I can paint them in the comfort of my studio. Don't have to be with the weather and all that sort of thing
Right.
else.
And on your computer, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and start. I'd like to find out the backstory on how you became you. You've got this illustrious history, which we'll go into, but you grew up in California, right?
Yes, I did. I grew up in St. Gabriel Valley, right near the mountains. And I always liked art as a kid, like most artists like myself. I loved to draw when I was a boy and used to copy the comic strips and that sort of thing. And when my father saw that I had an interest in art, he worked for a firm, doing blueprints and things for buildings. And he used to bring home these big tablets of blueprints, and I used the back of the paper to draw on.
Was he an architect?
No, he was an engineer.
He was an engineer. Okay.
Yeah. And so that gave me paper to draw when I was a kid. And then when I got in high school, I really like sports too. I always wanted to be a professional pitcher. I was really good when I was in school, but I couldn't throw a very good curveball. So I decided artwork was probably a better direction. I was the art editor of my yearbook when I was a senior in high school, and then I went on to college and
Were
took a
you
lot of classes.
were you winning awards as a kid? I mean, were you recognized as kind
Oh
of the
yeah,
art kid?
I entered the local shows when I was in high school and used to win the blue ribbons and that sort of thing.
And so
Yeah,
everybody knew you as the art kid, right? You were one of them. I'm sure there's more than.
yeah. The kids in my school knew that I was a good artist. I thought it was good then. And
Clearly,
then after,
clearly you were, because you made a 40-year career out of it.
yeah.
So
Anyway,
were your folks interested in you being in this field?
no,
Yeah.
they thought I was not going to make much money as an artist and try to persuade me to do other things. But it was my passion, it's like what I really wanted to do. And I ended up being accepted to ArtCenter College of Design in Los Angeles and got my degree from there.
What year was
And
it that you got into art?
I graduated in January of 1974 from there. And I started showing my work around Los Angeles, and a designer who worked in this small design firm, Forrester and Dilts, he asked me to come over to his studio and work as a staff illustrator. And that's where I met Bob Rodriguez. He was the other staff illustrator there. And that's what we became friends. And I worked there for, about 6-7 months. And then ArtCenter College of Design started this illustration workshop in Connecticut with 6 really well-known illustrators. And they selected me and 8 other graduate students to be in this workshop, and we all had to move back to Westport, Connecticut area. And we got to study with really the king of illustration back there, Mark English, Bernie Fuchs, Bob Peak,
They were
Alan
teaching.
Colbert.
They were teaching at this school in Connecticut.
No, they were all freelance illustrators, very successful in the business.
Right.
And we would meet at their homes and studios out there in Connecticut where they lived.
I see.
And they helped me kind of redo my college portfolio.
Yeah.
And introduced me to a lot of people. And then I started my career in New York City as an illustrator, freelance illustrator.
And so what did you learn from those individuals, maybe specifically? Because I keep hearing so much about Mark English from different individuals that worked with him, whether it's Blackshear or, Tucker or, they all.
Well, these guys were so good. I mean, they're all in the Illustrator Hall of Fame now in New York City.
Right.
And they were very helpful to us. They treated us almost like friends, and looked over our work and had us redo some sample illustrations for our portfolio to help us get started, and gave us a lot of input into what it's like being an illustrator. And it was amazing. It really was. I'm so glad I got a chance to do it. It was, financially, it was difficult for me to do that. My wife was expecting our first child while we went back there.
This is like 75 or so?
74. It was the fall of 74.
The Vietnam War had just kind of, it had ended. So, because you must have graduated high school in around 1970 or so?
67.
Oh, yeah, 67. So you were definitely in that whole Vietnam era, big time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a wild time for sure.
And do you remember getting your number, your lottery number?
Yes. When Nixon had that first lottery, I was 1A, ready to go. I was thinking, oh man, I'm going to go to Vietnam. And they picked, my birthday was picked 289th.
Yeah.
save my bacon. And so I was able to go to art school instead of going into the military. My brother, his birthday is the day after mine, got number 11.
Oh, wow.
So he went to the Navy. Um, anyway, so I was very fortunate and just continued my studies and to do what I wanted to do.
And the people at Art Center, where you went, who else went there that we maybe would recognize now that were classmates of yours?
Other illustrators?
Yeah.
Oh, well, of course, Mark English went there.
Yes. But in your class,
But,
were there individuals that are still working
well,
today or in art?
Trying to think. Most of the people I studied with, I don't know what they're doing now. Uh, Bob went to Chenard. He didn't go to Art Center, and and my other friend Bob Krogel, he also went to Chenard. So, I'm trying to think. Unfortunately, some of the guys I went to school with and stuff have passed away.
Right.
They were successful illustrators. So I just feel very fortunate that I'm still plugging away here.
Yeah, I mean, when you think
And
about it, I mean, Art Center is one of the top schools in America for that, maybe the top school for what you were in. And yet there's not many in your class, if any, that are still working in the field of any type of art, it sounds like, as far as you know.
well, I'm sure there is. I just, off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone really. But I have one friend, Rick McCullum. He's done fine art now. He was an illustrator in my class, and but
Seems like all the people that were doing illustration at that time, and there's a lot of them, are now all, if they're still in art, are doing fine illustration. Or doing fine art.
many former illustrators are doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And I really feel they're some of the better ones too, because we all know how to draw well. We all learned traditionally how to draw and paint.
Right.
The young guys coming now, they're doing everything on the computer.
Right. Though you had to learn how to
So
do that. You had to learn how, I mean, because you sure weren't taught. There were no computers when you got your degree.
no, that's my Mark. What I kept thinking, how is computer going to get that good that I can do artwork like I do now on the computer? and sure enough, I started working for Walt Disney doing posters for them, and I was doing 30 by 40 big posters for them, for the movies, and they're airbrush and acrylic and everything. And one day, the head guy there, what's his name, Andy Sadisky, he told me, Keith, if you don't learn how to do all this on the computer in about 4 months, we're going digital, and you won't be able to work for us anymore.
Wow.
So that's good.
So what was that? I mean, what did that
That
feel?
was about 1995.
Yeah.
That was, yeah, that scared the heck out of me. I was like, I had to go back to school. My son, who was a senior in high school, knew a lot about computers at that time. He helped me pick my first Mac computer, and I got a Wacom tablet and the Photoshop software, all that sort of thing. And I practiced for about 4 months and getting the hang of it. And the first job that I did was an annual pass poster for Disneyland. For those guys that put out in front of the park.
Right.
And I had to do the whole thing digitally. And it was like I was just out of art school again, I was so nervous, just doing the steps. And I hired a designer friend of mine who knew computers really well. And if I got in a jam, I would call him and he would tell me the steps to get out of when I got stuck somewhere, things didn't work right, and he would help me. So it took me another, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, and I started getting the hang of it a lot better. And then I realized it's just another tool to create artwork. Once you master that tool, I could create exactly what I did before, only it's done a different way.
How long did it take you to do that, to feel comfortable?
Altogether, by about 6, 8 months.
Yeah, not long then.
Yeah, and I was just doing it over and over again, and
Did you
doing
know?
it in layers. Doing it in layers was a big advantage. Doing the posters, the movie posters, because I could create the background of one layer, the figures in different layers, and I could move things around. You can't do that, in a traditional painting.
Right.
So it was an advantage that way, and it kept me going as an illustrator for about another 10 or 12 years before I left the business and went into fine art.
And you were probably a lot faster once you got the hang of the digital than you were doing it as a painter, or is that not right?
Well, it's funny. You think it would be faster, Mark, but it really wasn't. I mean, it's still pretty intense.
Yeah.
Uh, and, but, I was able to do quite a bit. I'd say the last 8 years of my career as an illustrator, I'd say about 85% of my work was done on the computer.
Oh.
And I still use it today when I desktop things are for advertising, or if I take some photographs that I've shot for a traditional painting, I can Photoshop it and change the backgrounds and make the composition much stronger.
Oh.
And I print that out and I use that to paint from.
And do you use that for your fine art as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can take some photo reference, and if I see some nice clouds I want to put in the background, or I want to move the figure slightly or add things to the composition, you can do that in Photoshop.
Wow.
And it really helps me make the composition much stronger.
Do you
when I
find
start to
that
paint
that takes away from your drawing ability? I mean, because as an illustrator, you've got to draw incredibly well. I mean, you have that skill set, clearly.
Yeah, well, I still do all the sketches. I have to do all the sketches, white paintings, and work it all out. After I do the Photoshop thing, then I do a drawing from that. In fact, you want to see one?
Yeah, sure. So for those people that aren't watching,
this is a painting.
Describe it.
This is a painting. This is a painting I just started, and this is the Photoshopped thing I did for it.
So this is a very complete drawing or a photo. In fact, it's the same thing behind almost, it looks like, in your studio. Is that the painting
Well,
that's
it's
on the easel behind you?
This is the photo. This is about 20 or 15 photos put together. Believe it or not.
Oh, I believe it.
The background, each character, the wagon, the horses, everything's been
Lift it up
changed.
a little higher. Lift it up a little bit higher that way. Yeah, a little bit more. There you go. So this is this image of somebody with a wagon with horses and Native American that are talking to him. So that image that is,
Yep.
I can see it on your easel, or I can see a painting on your easel. That's
Here's a drawing
I see.
that I did from it. Okay.
Got it. So what he's done is even though this is just Photoshop together with how many paintings? Photos?
Oh gosh, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's at least 10 pictures.
Well, there's 10 pictures, but he's got a very complete drawing that, if you would see it, you go, oh, you could sell that as just the drawing. And so
I love this composition. It really tells a neat story. It's about a snake oil salesman guy traveling through the Badlands from one town to the next, and he's lost. And these Native American guys show up and give him directions how to get to water.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd love to do paintings that tell a story.
Yeah. Well, you're an illustrator. I mean, that's what you have done. So even if you're doing fine art, I'm sure you're still a storyteller. I think
the painting is back there on my easel. You can see I'm working on it.
Yeah. And so that painting that you're doing, how big is that painting going to be?
It's 36 by 20.
36 by 20. Yeah. Okay. And so when you, we kind of jumped ahead to get to 1995 when you switched over to digital, but after you started working with English and these other individuals in Connecticut, doing kind of basically post-grad training, then you finished up. And what was your first big job after that point? What did you do?
Well, at first I didn't have any printed samples. I just had all the artwork I had from going to art school. And so I had a big case made, and I went around New York and I was showing my original paintings to these art directors. and I started picking up paperback book covers.
Huh.
And they, at that time, they paid about $600 a cover. The hardcover was they paid a little bit more. And then I started getting magazine illustration work from different magazines.
And this
And
is like 75 now?
yes.
Yeah.
Then I did a nice big editorial piece for Audubon magazine. It was probably my first bigger assignment. And I did some TV guide stuff, and some advertising work. And then after I was in New York for about a year, my wife and I decided we wanted to come back to Los Angeles. And the illustrators I studied with told me I should stay in New York to be successful. But that was before the fax machine came out and FedEx and all that sort of thing. So we moved back to Los Angeles, and I got a job at another design studio, and I was a staff illustrator there, and did a lot of comps and storyboards for commercials. I did illustrated some billboards and some advertising work. And then on the side, I was getting work from different magazines in Los Angeles.
Huh.
And started working for the movie studios doing movie comps, they called them, where you would paint an idea for a movie poster. And then the art director would pick and choose. If they liked your idea, then you would do the finished art for the poster.
So you're working for a company, but on the side you were doing the movies poster stuff?
Yeah, the advertising stuff I was through the studio, and then the editorial and movie work I got on my own.
And so you would do basically a storyboard kind of a thing and say, this is my idea for the poster.
The art directors would give you a rough idea sketch, and they expect you to do a small finished painting.
And so what would that be that they would give you? Give me an example of like that for one of the ones I've done.
When I first started doing them, these art directors, a lot of them didn't know how to draw at all. Okay. And I'd see their ideas and I kind of get depressed. I go, God, that looks horrible, but it was just the idea. So then I had to go out, and they would give me some movie stills of the movie stars' faces and that sort of thing. But the bodies, I had to pose the bodies for the figures. So I put the heads on them. And so I'd use myself, my wife, my neighbors, and then I would do a small painting of their idea. And they usually liked them, but it was just a matter of they would hire maybe 8 or 10 other artists to do comps for them at the same time.
And so you're all competing at the same time to try to get the finish.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But you're still going to get paid for doing the.
Yeah, it was. I used to get about $2,000 for a comp.
Okay.
For a comp painting.
And if they picked it, then what happened? They go, yeah, we want you to do that.
Then you do them, and sometimes they give you 2 or 3 idea comps to do at the same time. It wasn't just one.
I see.
And then if you got the finished poster, you get maybe $8,000 to $10,000 for it.
And would you get to keep the artwork?
And well, you're supposed to. There's a few times I didn't.
Because they just kept it.
Yeah, I did one for Warner Brothers for a film called Second Sight with Bronson Pinchot as the main actor. And I went down there later to get my painting back, and someone had taken it, and it wasn't there, and it was supposed to be in storage. Someone had lifted it.
Yeah.
So I didn't get it back.
And so what were some, because I know you did some big name posters, right? What were some of the things?
Well, I did a few posters. I don't know if they're big name. I did one called Maria's Lovers with Natasha Kinski. And I did a horror movie called The House of the Long Shadows with Vincent Price and Christopher Lee and those characters.
You ever meet Vincent Price, by the way?
No, I never got to meet him.
He's a big art collector.
Yeah, that's what I heard. And they were fun to do. I really enjoyed them. At the same time, I was doing a lot of advertising work. I had a rep in New York. When I moved back to Los Angeles, I retained an agent in New York, and I got one in Chicago.
Yeah.
They brought in a lot of work for me, and they kept me busy.
But you did do posters for Disney, right? You did like
Yeah,
Lilo
well,
Stitch and some of these other ones, right?
about 90, the early mid 90s, the first big poster I did for them was Pocahontas.
Yeah, that's a huge one.
Yeah, and then I did
I remember
Hercules.
that poster. I actually can visualize that poster, and that was your imagery.
Yeah,
You did it?
well, I'll take that back. The posters that I did, most of them were used for the DVD packaging,
Mhm.
and well, before that, the video packaging. But I did Hunchback of Notre Dame, and then I did Hercules, Treasure Planet, Oliver and Company, Lilo Stitch. Did quite a few. I think altogether, Mark, I did about 50 some posters for them.
For Disney.
Some were for a cartoon series, and some were for educational videos. Uh, and I also did the cardboard cutout displays you saw in the movie theaters for the animated films. So I had to do big dimensional things.
Did you get
And
any of those for your own collection or your own?
in my garage, I have a whole folder full of all the cutouts. I don't know
Yeah.
what to do with them though. I don't know if anyone collects that stuff.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely, they do. 100%. Well, first of all, I put them on my website. I would
Oh,
area
well,
my
there's a
website
problem with Disney coming after you when you do that sort of thing.
that you can't say that you did these, even though you did them.
Well, it's because they own the copyright and all that stuff. I also have about 75 original animator drawings that the animators gave me when I worked on these films. Those have to be worth quite a bit of money also.
Yeah. Yeah. You might want to be selling those and for a little bit, take a hiatus from painting. You might be shocked at how much they actually are.
Yeah, I'm sure they're worth some money. I've got quite a few of them. And,
What kind of things were those animated from?
well, the different films that I did, the animators that worked on the individual characters for the movie, they would give me their approved sketch for their character.
Yeah.
So, like when I did Hunchback of Notre Dame, I had one guy gave me a sketch of the gargoyles, one of the Hunchback, one of the girl, the different characters, and Pocahontas. They, all the key artists that did her, and John Smith, and all the other things. I have all those sketches. So that's kind of neat. I got them all saved in a big folder.
Oh yeah, those are definitely valuable. I can assure you.
Yeah.
But I mean, of course, they have other value too, which is sentimental and they
Oh
can't
yeah.
be artists and all that. And I understand that.
It was a fun career doing that sort of thing. They were good people to work with, at least the ones I was associated with.
Yeah. And so, how long did you work with Disney doing that kind of material?
I think I did 10 years, I think, about 10 years. And then when everything went digital, when their films went digital, not traditionally painted, they
Right.
didn't need, there was 2 or 3 other illustrators besides myself that did most of the work. And then they didn't need us anymore.
Even
when they
though
went
you
to
had learned how to move on to digital, they still didn't really need your skill set.
Well, I guess because all the files are visually done, they could just, pick the pose they want from what they had. They didn't need to use an illustrator.
So they took
I
all the
always found that.
Yeah.
What's
Mm.
that?
They took all the stuff that you'd already done, or other people too, and they could use those for reference and just change them digitally themselves.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Here it's been over 30 years since I did Hercules. And
Yes.
because they copyright everything, now they're reusing the artwork again. I got to show you.
And do you get paid for any of that when they
No.
reuse it? It's just you got paid one time, and then
They're selling this doll in the park.
yeah.
My poster in the background.
Turn it a little bit. There you go. Okay, because so he's showing me an Amazon pop doll that I don't know what that is exactly. Was
Well,
that?
they put my poster on the back.
Oh, so that was your person. Oh, yeah, I remember that poster. I definitely remember that poster.
Yeah.
So does that make you feel good or the opposite?
Makes me feel like an old timer, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, you see that, and I mean, I understand it. You're an illustrator. You got paid for what you did, and that's that. But does some part of you go, wow, it'd be nice if I got a little royalty for?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I would think. I mean, I don't know, but
I'll show you one other one here. What?
for those who don't have watching this on YouTube, so you might want to watch this on YouTube. We're in Keith's studio, and he's got just a variety of paintings and skulls and all sorts of things. And now he's bringing over some of these DVD or videos.
This is
before DVDs, I guess.
They remarketed this other poster I did.
Yeah, which is turn it a little bit. The lights, Stitch. Oh yeah, the Lilo and Stitch, which I also remember. And
it's what it is a notebook.
Oh, it's a notebook that they've done.
But it looks like a video box.
And it does. And
that's just a pad of paper.
So
I did the front and back cover, and here 30 years later, they released it like this.
So couldn't you take something like that? So what he showed us is his original artwork from Lilo and Stitch that's now in kind of like a journal. Could you take those, buy those, and then do cool drawings in the book itself and then sell those as your artwork? I mean, it seems like, why couldn't you?
There's another one I did, the one I did for Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Kind of thing.
But same thing. It's a sketch. It's a book, a tablet of paper.
I don't know why you couldn't do that though, and just say, put your own original sketch, let's say on the first page, and then sell them to people who want to buy the thing, but they also have an original Batcheller illustration in the thing.
Yeah, well, that's
too much work.
Yeah, I don't know if it'd be worth it to do that, but it'd be interesting.
I think it'd be very interesting. I would like to order one of Lilo and Stitch, please.
Oh, okay.
with an image in the front.
I was just fascinated that after all these years, they're using the artwork again for these other little things to market.
I'd say everybody that's listened to this podcast, when they go to your website, when they're done with this, put in a email and say, I would like to buy or order a Lilo and Stitch journal book with an original Keith Batcheller image in it.
There you go.
I think it would be very interesting. I mean, it's unique. I mean, you have a skill set, a unique life story that should be, people should know about it.
Thank you.
It's clearly, but it's so when did they just come out with those new books? When did that happen?
My son spotted these. He goes to Disneyland quite often, and he goes, Dad, they're using your art again. I go, what? and then they did it with this doll. I go, oh, geez,
Yeah.
It's they don't have to pay for them, so they're just reusing the art,
Yeah. Well, so when you finish up with Disney, that is around the time that they go digital. Is that right? Right in that 1995? I mean,
the last kind of work I did for them was about maybe 2007, maybe.
Okay, so you kept working periodically.
And then I started doing oil paintings I got invited to a couple of shows, and so I jumped in that and started doing oil paintings, and it was fun getting my hands dirty again and doing real paintings.
And is that what made you go, okay, maybe I should be doing fine art now that you got invited to do some different shows? Is that what it was, or was it a combination?
Actually, I sought them out. I mean, I asked if I could be in these shows, and they gave me a deadline and a reason to start really, doing some serious paintings, and so I did that for a couple of years, and I realized how hard it was to find the right reference material for what I wanted to paint. So I went to South Dakota on a photo shoot. It was called the Artist Ride. A lot of artists do this. And I met a lot of Native American people and real cowboys. And I spent 3 days taking pictures. And that gave me a lot of ammunition to use for the paintings that I'm doing. And I've done that many times, these photo shoots.
And you're more based on doing historical imagery of the West and both Western and Native arts. Is that a fair statement?
Well, historical, I guess historical. I love to paint people. You know,
Yeah.
that's always been my strength. I love to do portraits of people. I love to tell a story with my images that I paint, and it makes more to me. It makes them more fun to look at. You know, when you see a painting and you enjoy the imagery and you wonder what they're doing. I don't like to do static images so much,
Yeah.
where it's just a person posed up, you know, with nothing else going on. I like to tell a story or you know, or a really deep feeling or something to make the image more exciting to look at.
And what was it that really caused you to go, okay, because you're making, I assume, a pretty good living as an illustrator. You're doing it for over 30 years
Yeah,
and done
yeah, I
some of the
did.
top things in the field, really. What was it that you go, okay, I need to move on. I need to do something else. Well, what was that that drove
Well,
you?
you're right. The income I made as an illustrator was really good. I mean,
I would assume.
I was very fortunate, but it was getting old hat. I was getting tired of being told what to paint. You know, and you know, as an illustrator, you're selling products basically as an illustrator.
Yeah,
You're hired by a company to do an image to help sell their product,
right.
whether it be a movie poster or you know, I did stuff for the NFL for a while, and but I was always told what to paint. I didn't. You know, to me, it was always it was neat if I could turn the job in and have the artist or in the art director very happy, and then I was happy myself. Then it was a win-win that
Mhm.
I created something that I really thought I was proud of, and they loved it too. But as a fine artist, you really have so much more freedom, and I get to choose the images I paint and the direction I want to go. So that really, you know, at first of course, I wasn't making the living I was as an illustrator, um, but things have gotten much better, and you know, and now that I'm at a certain age, that you know, that I invested some of my income so that I'm able to do well, you know, and so it's been really fun for me.
What are the biggest obstacles that you face now? Because you've kind of come into the fine art world at a later point in your career, toward the end of your career.
Mhm.
Um, and what issues have you found that are, are obstacles? I'm sure there are some.
Yes, there are. There's some of these shows that I've been. They only accept one, two, or three paintings, and
Right.
that's it. And they don't want you to uh, submit work you've done or had submitted before in your show. It always has to be new work. I see. And you're really when you submit work to be accepted, you're stuck with whatever they pick, whatever they
Right.
accept. You know, it's going to be in the show. So you can't have other things that you wanted unless it's accepted by them. So that's a little frustrating. I was in a show just recently in March called the Out West Show in Great Falls, Montana,
Mhm.
and I got to bring about 30 paintings up there. So it was I really people just loved the work I did, you know, and it was really fun to kind of show up things that I'd done years before. You know, I had it all on display and sold a few nice paintings up there. The only problem with doing that is you have to drive quite a distance. I'm on
Yeah,
the
you got
road.
to go to Great Falls, and it's in the spring, which can be
Yeah,
done.
well, driving up there in March was a little hairy, all the snow.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, and they had a lot of snow this year.
Oh yeah, I got up to DuBose, Idaho, and they had closed Highway 15. I was stuck in a truck stop for 3 or 4 hours till they cleared the road. And man,
Were you thinking, wow,
um,
this art stuff's really glamorous?
well, Um, it was quite an adventure. And then later this year, I'm going to go down to Kerrville, Texas for a show there
Uh-huh.
um, at the museum there. And but that show, you can only have 3 paintings.
And
Um,
are you showing in galleries right now?
yes, I'm
Where
in a
can they
really
find?
nice gallery.
Yeah, what galleries are your artwork in?
Well, I'm in a really nice gallery in Whitefish, Montana, going to the Sun Gallery. It's really it's got they have a lot of good artists there, and I've always sold several paintings there. And then I'm in a small gallery up in Solvang, California. Um, and then Bob Rodriguez and I have put together an online gallery that we have our work on right now.
And
And
what's that URL? What's the website?
for Bob, I think it's a Cottonwood Gallery. It's called.
Okay.
It's on my website. It's on
Okay.
my website.
Give people your website name so they can get it.
Oh, it's just KeithBatchellerGallery.com.
And bachelor is not
Yeah,
spelled like a bachelor.
yeah, it's BATCHELLER.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I've
and
gone there and I've seen things that are on there as well.
yeah, and then I'm in another show in the Bosque Art Classic in Clifton, Texas. Done shows there, and up in Shia, Wyoming, I'm in a show up there, and then the Mountain Oyster Club in Tucson, Arizona.
Right.
I do a show there.
You've managed to get into a lot of shows and galleries, and so you've started to make traction. It sounds. Yeah.
In the Settlers West Gallery, they have that miniature show in February. I've been in that the last 7 years, I think.
Yeah, that's a great show for people to come visit if they haven't.
Yeah. I think I sent you some of those paintings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what would you give advice to somebody who's starting, who may have had a good career in illustration or something else, and now is wanting to move into the fine art world? What do you tell them to do? How do you attack it?
Well, it's if you have the passion for the art that you're doing, it's just a matter of producing the work and then just finding where all these shows are and sending samples of your work to them to be entered in these shows they have, and then trying to get them accepted. I'm also in the California Art Club. It's a really big club here in California, and I'm in a show right now over in San Marino at the old mill. And I did a couple of landscapes of the local mountains they're in that show. I think the hard part, at least for me, was, I spent all the time in my studio producing these paintings, and I should spend more time reaching out to shows and galleries. I think I need to do that more. Because I have enough work now that I really need to get it out there.
How about
huh?
I was going to say, how about Instagram? You're on Instagram?
I am, but I should push that more. I only have a couple of pieces on there. I have a Facebook page that I show my work. It's called Art of Keith Batcheller.
Yeah.
I have about 3,500 fans on that page.
Yeah, I find, and I can't speak for everyone, but I think that Instagram for artists seems to be the place to be.
Okay.
That's where people go. That's where they want to look at art. It's a much more visual media, I think, on Instagram.
Yeah.
I find it to be really important for when you try to market your own work that you need to do that. So whatever it's worth. So, and show people what you do. Show them what you're doing out in the world, what you've accomplished. And I think that nothing would be more engaging than for you to show up to Disneyland and go in and get one of those books of Lilo and Stitch, or, live. Oh, here's my book. This is me. Yes, I did this. I'm not getting paid for it, but yeah, it's nice.
I remember. I remember when I saw that we were actually at Disneyland on Main Street, and my son saw this book, and so we we told the people that are running the store that I'd done the art, and they were pretty excited, I guess.
Yeah, they should be.
Um,
They should have had you sign
yeah,
every one of the back books.
yeah.
That's what they should have done. So where do you
Anyway, it's just part of my.
yeah, I was gonna say, where do you see illustration going from here with AI? I don't know if you're following any of this with the chat PT and things that are going on, GPT.
Now that I've retired from illustration, I don't follow it like I used to.
Yeah.
Um, I know they still have these Illustrator books that come out, the workbook, and the one in New York. The artists have to buy pages and these books to sell their art, to advertise their art.
Okay.
And I just don't think illustration is as lucrative as it used to be. It's so much of it is digitally done, and so the styles that I see are very similar. Some of them, what the artist kind of graphic styles they do.
Right.
Some illustrators are sort of really stand out, of course, but uh, and now with this AI, you called it, where the computer can generate art and copy a style,
Uh-huh.
and I think that's going to go into fine art too. I hate
It's
to
gonna
say
go
that,
into
but
everything for sure. There's no doubt. But
yeah,
illustration, especially if you can just put in everything you want, the components that you want to see, and it spits it out in 10 seconds or less. I don't know how human illustrators compete. I think that graphic designers and illustrators have issues.
yeah, that's a sad thing. As when I worked as an illustrator, I mean, about every 5 or 6 years, I had to kind of reinvent myself.
Right.
I had stayed current with the trends,
Right.
um, changed things I was doing, made different subject matter to stay current in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And the fine art isn't really that way. It's it's more emotional. People, if they love your picture, they're going to buy it, right? And and you're not dealing with art directors; you're dealing with real people.
Right.
So it's just a totally different audience than what I was used to as an illustrator.
Yeah. No, it's different. But it's interesting. You said you have to change every 5 or 6 years when you're doing illustration. I think with AI, that's going to be the same component. You're going to have to change and modify. And basically, you're probably going to have to be someone who is very qualified in dealing with program software of AI, right? So you're really become like almost a software engineer versus a illustrator. That's what I would guess, but we'll see. It's going to play out very quickly in the next 3 to 5 years, I would think.
Before I left illustration, I was active in the Society of Illustrators, and enjoyed that. And then I decided just to go to one of their meetings after I'd been doing fine art for about 9 or 10 years, and I was sad to see so many of these artists were really making a living. It was they were doing samples of work and trying to sell it to someone for a comic strip or do different things, and that's a lot of the young illustrators. They want to do more animated stuff, more comic book looking stuff. And
Why do you think that is?
that's a good question. They just are enamored with it. I don't know if I told you, I taught a class in illustration. It was like 2 mornings a week at a local college near here, and I did that for about 40 years on the side. And a lot of my students, the last, I don't know, 10, 12 years I taught, they wanted to do this anime kind of stuff, or, very cartoony type of things. And that's what they all love to do.
Yeah, that's where culture is. That's where the movies are, games, all that kind of stuff. I would assume a lot of illustrators are involved in the game production now.
Yeah, I'm sure a fair number of them are, sure.
It's an area I don't.
You have to go where the work is,
Yeah, that's it, right?
And the toy companies, I worked for toy companies too, and that was a big market.
And what would you do for them?
What did I do for them?
Yeah,
Well, I did a lot of different games, and then you remember that it was still out there, the Teenage Ninja Turtles.
of
Remember
course.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was approached by someone to do a poster for them when they first were coming out, and I thought, what in the world is this Teenage
Uh-huh.
Ninja Turtle? So I did the poster, and they really liked it. And about, I don't know, almost a year later, the toy company that was doing all the toys called me up and wanted me to do the packaging for these things.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, okay. And it really took off. I had, for about, I don't know, 6 years, I did all this toy packaging for Playmates toys. And uh, and then when they had Toy Fair, I had to do a lot of work to produce new things for that. And so I did, like I said, for about 6, 7 years. And then when I was starting my career as a fine artist, I got a call from these three guys that were writing a book on the Ninja Turtles.
Huh?
And they asked me if I had any of my old packaging and stuff I had done for them. I said, well, in my garage, I think I saved a bunch of stuff.
Huh.
And they flew out here from back east, and they came up to my studio, and they bought a whole bunch of my old sketches and everything. And I couldn't believe how much money they gave me for all this old stuff, but these guys grew up with it. They were all
Oh,
around 40 years old.
no, it's a big deal. Yeah, the guy who was one of the producers of it lives here in Tucson, actually. It was a massive, massive deal.
So they were so excited to see all this old stuff I had. I was about ready to throw it away. I'm glad I didn't.
I'm sure. I would think that you could even go to one of those Comic-Con kind of things just for all the different things that you've done, and people would be interested in seeing that,
Yeah.
especially for Ninja Turtles. Yeah.
And so that was a funny little part of my career that I did that stuff for me. It paid so well that I couldn't turn it down. And they kept giving me so much work, as an illustrator. That's one thing as an illustrator too, is like you need clients that are repeat clients
Right.
that stay busy so they pay the bills, right? And so they were one of those clients that I had. And
And so it was
so it
all
worked out.
packaging for toys, different kinds of toys and things, not
Yeah,
just
I did the blister cards for the little figures that they
yeah.
put up on the shelves, and
Yeah.
I did the boxes of some of the big toys that came with it. And yeah, it was quite a bit of stuff. Yeah. So like I said, it lasted about 6 or 7 years, and then they came out with this really big book on the Ninja Turtles, and they had about 40 of my illustrations in this book.
Yeah.
Those got
So the guys that bought everything, they did put out the book.
yes.
Now, what do you know
So
what the name of the book is by any chance?
Hold on a sec. Seeing it right over here.
This is what I love about podcasts. You never know what's going to turn up. As like, oh, by the way, yeah, I did all the Ninja Turtle stuff. So
Here's the book.
So it's called Rad Plastic, and it's all. Is it
Look
all?
yourself. Look at it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's a thick book.
That's
I
a
mean,
beautiful book, actually.
I couldn't believe I said I'd find one of my paintings in here.
And so was it only just on the Ninja Turtle stuff, or
It
was
was from the Ninja when it first started? This all the way through to the 2000s. Like, here's a rendering I did. One of the characters.
Oh yeah, like a robot, kind of a transformer kind of a thing. Yeah.
But they marketed this thing and sold it all over the place.
Yeah, they probably did great. They got all the art for free basically after they sold their book. Well, assuming they kept the artwork and resell that, they sounded more like collector types. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
well,
the main guy.
Yeah,
the main guy that did the book, he has a basement room in his house, and he has collections of all kinds of stuff in there. So he took a lot of my stuff and put it on display in his basement.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I get it. I mean, for kids, that's iconic. I mean, for us, it might have been the Lone Ranger or Gunsmoke or, something like that. And, that's why we were all interested in Native American stuff, cowboy Indian stuff. And, you ask, well, why are these kids all interested in animation? Well, that's what they grew up with, right? Mario Brothers
Yeah.
or whatever. And, so things move on. The good part is it's still all art driven, quite frankly.
Yeah, my students were more impressed with what I did for the Ninja Turtles than what I was doing now. So
Well,
they really liked it.
you think about it, the amount of people that it affected, it's a huge amount. I mean, most people who are 30 to 40 know that show. They understand it. They can talk about it. They love it, So, for you, it was a job. But for them, it was their childhood and all that goes along with that. So is there anything, as we kind of wrap this up, you'd like to finish with or let people know?
Well, I just say that I'm really enjoying what I'm doing now as a fine artist, and I feel I can't wait to see what happens in the next couple of years. Uh, I've got these new shows I'm in, and people are very receptive for what I'm doing, and I'm just excited to see where it goes, and I loved what I'm painting, and I can just when people look at my work, they seem to really really enjoy it. So it's really satisfying that way, and
Well, that's the perfect way to end, I think. And the monitor froze up right here at the end. So welcome to the technology world. Keith, I really appreciate having you on. It was really wonderful.